Hey guys, my name is Jeff, and this is the 2024 Hyundai Like Sunday Sonata, which starts at $27,000, less than $31,000 for the hybrid models. And for 2024, it's been completely changed on the exterior, for the better, I might add, and the gas models now have the option of all-wheel drive. In this video, I'll take you through the exterior, the interior, the powertrain, and of course, we'll take it for a drive using this top-of-the-line Hyundai Sonata Hybrid Limited. I think it goes without saying that the heart and soul of any hybrid is the powertrain. In this case, we have a naturally aspirated 2-liter inline 4-cylinder hybrid system producing a combined 192 horsepower and 271 pound-feet of torque. The important note for those figures, however, is that it doesn't tell the whole story. Because it's a hybrid, it's a mix of combustion motors and an electric motor, is the fact that the electric motors will always produce their max power output as long as they're being utilized, whereas the gas motors, the power figures will fluctuate as they run throughout the rev range. What that means is if you had the exact same power input from a purely combustion engine, you would be making less power in certain areas. So you have more of that power available at any one time in a hybrid. So that's an important figure to remember when you see those power figures. The other interesting thing about the Sonata, which is very, very unique, is that it's paired with a 6-speed automatic transmission. You see, most of the pure hybrids, that excludes mild hybrids, actually use CVT transmissions, or even in some cases planetary gear sets. And if that's ever deterred you from buying a hybrid in the past, well, that's not a problem here in the Sonata. However, the Sonata is front-wheel drive only. If you want an all-wheel drive model, you'll have to look to the gas-only version of the Sonata, which now offers all-wheel drive in the gas-only models for 2024, or you'll have to look to the competition. Now, the fuel economy is fantastic. You have an EPA-rated 44 miles per gallon city, 51 miles per gallon highway, and 47 miles per gallon combined. Now, if we take a look at the fact that this is a 13.2 gallon fuel tank, that's not a very big tank. However, because of those great fuel economy numbers, you can get up to 580 miles per tank on average, which is really good. And if you're really good about the way you drive and your fuel economy, maybe you're going downhill, you can definitely eke out over 600 miles of range, which is incredibly impressive, enough to go to bat with the best of them in terms of what hybrids are for sale. It makes a huge value proposition for the Hyundai Sonata Hybrid. So for 2024, Hyundai gave the Sonata a facelift, and I must say, it looks significantly better than the outgoing initial design. So let's take a quick look at what they've changed. In the front here, we have all LED lighting, which includes the addition of this very cool light bar that goes all the way across. This is going to be your daytime running light. The actual headlights are going to be this unit right here below that. So obviously, all of the addition of LED lighting means you won't have to worry about too much about being able to see all of that fantastic tech. We have a Hyundai badge front and center, all of these very cool accents and features that give a cool textured 3D effect here in the front. And as we continue to move down the side of the car here, we have these very cool 17-inch wheels, which I believe are new for the facelift models. They're quite sharp, kind of an aero disc look that may or may not help with aerodynamics. They have these extra ridges that act like they help, but some of that is also styling cues that we'll see throughout the car. You do have your LED side indicators here as well. And as we move back to these mirrors, these have some really cool features. Now, of course, these do have a two-tone finish on them here for our red car, but more importantly is the camera over here in the side. Now, what this camera does, and this isn't just Hyundai, this also applies to Kia and Genesis models, but when you put on your turn signal, this camera will actually have its own display on the dash that'll show you what's in your blind spot, which shouldn't necessarily replace looking over your shoulder, but it's a nice addition. This car also has the panoramic sunroof, which does actually slightly decrease the interior headroom by getting the sunroof, but you can open it up and it's a nice luxury to have. You might notice the black pillars here. You can even see keyless entry on the exterior, nice black side skirts, more of those 17-inch wheels, our fuel cap, and of course, as we come to the very back of the car, some more of those black textured figures, and it's almost got a little bit of a lip in the back to just kick it up a touch, and of course, LED taillights. And the LED taillights are quite a cool feature as well. It's almost more in line with some of the H design tech that we've seen in other Hyundai models, like the Santa Fe, for example. If you look, it kind of goes over here and stretches out into this really wide H, which isn't too shabby. And most importantly, on the Limited here, we actually have a power lift trunk. So there's some cool technology in there, in addition to the fact that you can actually drop the rear seats from the back trunk. This is something we often see in SUVs, but not always in sedans. But the fact that you can drop the seats from back here makes it that much easier, where you're not running around the car constantly anytime you need to manage some of your storage. So that's a pretty nice feature. But power trunk is not necessary, I think, when it comes to sedans, but it's a nice luxury to have. Maybe you do a lot of runs and you need to load groceries. It's nice to have. And then here in the very back, there's a few more bits here. We have what is acting like a mini diffuser. You can't really see the exhaust because it's on the right side. It's kind of hidden underneath the bodywork, but I think it's pretty sharp. Sonata badging, hybrid badging. It's not too shabby, and certainly a huge improvement over the previous Sonata design. Moving on to the interior, if we go ahead and open it up, this one has what Hyundai calls a two-tone gray. Now, personally, I think this is white right here. I don't see how it looks like a gray, but maybe I'm wrong. You can let me know in the comments down below. But this interior is quite sharp. Sure, it has some cheaper materials. There are lots of plastics in it, but I love the way it looks, and the build quality is quite sharp too. I haven't noticed any rattles or any extra flexing of anything that shouldn't be while driving the vehicle, which is very, very impressive. But before I get too far into some of the tech up front, I want to show you the back seats. Now, the back seats, of course, are leather trimmed just like the front, and they have this very cool perforated pattern that we also saw in the front. Obviously, you could fit 3 across the back if they are pretty narrow, or you could just use the center seat as a nice armrest or cup holder. And if we go ahead and climb into the back here, you can see here they do have vents to blow directly onto the rear passengers, which is very nice as far as keeping them comfortable goes. And in the back here, we have some USB Type-C chargers, which are also quite nice to have. Now, as far as the overall seating and functionality, I'm 6 foot even for reference, and as you can notice, my hair does touch the top, but the reason for that is this car has the optional panoramic roof. So this roof actually comes down a couple inches more than it would if you didn't get the panoramic roof option. So technically, you get a bit more headroom. That's something to keep in mind if you are maybe a bit taller, or maybe your family as a whole is just a bit taller. That's something to keep in mind. That being said, I'm 6 foot even. I can sit back here. My head doesn't touch the top. Even my legs, as far as that room goes, the seat's currently moved back for that ingress and egress, the power adjustments, and my knees do not touch the back. So I'm pretty impressed with the actual space back here, and I think you could fit a lot of people. But then again, the Sonata is one of the bigger sedans in the space, but there's a reason it goes toe-to-toe with things like the Camry. You also get these sunshades, which can be nice to have as far as just keeping out some of that extra heat if you're in the desert. Now, moving back up front here, these leather trimmed front seats are actually heated and ventilated, hence the perforation, quite a nice luxury. Leather wrapped steering wheel that is also heated, and you even get that Bose sound system, which isn't the best, but it's okay. Memory seatings, all of the controls for the window. Now, let's go ahead and climb inside and see what we're working with here. Go ahead and hit the power start button there, and the car comes to life. We don't want an update right now. Seat moves forward, everything automatically adjusts. The actual control stack here for the steering wheel is manually adjustable, and you have these really cool wraparound screens. Now, these are, of course, fully adjustable, fully digital. A lot of that can be managed through your controls here in the steering wheel, including adjusting the center stack display, and it will mix with some of your directional control, in addition to a very nice heads-up display with sign recognition that works pretty good for the most part. I haven't had any issues with it, and I think a heads-up display is just a nice luxury to have because it makes it that much easier to check your speed without taking your eyes off the road. This car does have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. The infotainment system itself, I found it quite easy to use. You actually have a mix of physical buttons down here below that you can use to either turn it on or off, adjust the volume. You also get your home adjust buttons, but you can also do that through the screen itself, and I found this to be fairly responsive. You also get Sirius XM. You get this cool hybrid screen that lets you see what your vehicle is currently doing, both the electric motor use, fuel economy, but you can also get the hybrid flow, meaning it'll show you where your energy is going as the engine's powering to charge the battery, to charge the motors, and utilize the motor to power the wheels, etc. Very cool tech. And of course, more of those adjustable knobs below. Now, diving below that, we have our climate control. So you can see our heated and ventilated seats. You just touch the arrow in the direction you want. And the ventilated seats are quite good. Here in Phoenix, it's quite hot. And these are some of the coldest ventilated seats that you will find anywhere. 3 different settings that goes for both hot and cold. You get it for the passenger and driver. You get dual zone climate control as well if you, the driver and the passenger, like different temperatures, hazard buttons, even our heated steering wheel controls, etc. Below that, we have our chargers, and there's some really cool tech in here that actually Kia, Hyundai, and Genesis all feature, and that is going to have to do with these buttons here. Now, as you may have noticed, this battery symbol here means that this is a charging port only. Sometimes when you plug into here, you get access to the CarPlay functionality, but if you don't want to do that, you can actually swap it between these 2 controls. Right now, it's on the battery setting, so it won't interfere with the CarPlay and integrate with the car. If you hit this button, it turns orange, and now the car will integrate with the CarPlay. So that's a pretty cool feature. I like that, so it doesn't mess up your sort of usability and comfort. It's the little things that count. Below that is a wireless charger. Some more control figures for our parking assist are cameras, which are quite good in this car, as you can see here for general parking. But you also have the mirror cameras, which work with the rear view mirrors to actually help you check your blind spots whenever you put on your turn signals. I think that's a fantastic luxury, another Kia, Hyundai, Genesis feature that should make its way into more cars outside of those models. As we continue to move on, we have our drive mode buttons. Eco is, of course, going to be your standard drive mode, but you also have a sport mode to make the car a bit more responsive if you wanted to use these flappy paddles here on the back of the steering wheel. And you have a My Drive mode, which is essentially set up to be a custom mode that you set up for the car. But Eco is what I've driven the car in for the most part because it's a hybrid. That's kind of what it's focused on. Over here, we have some cup holders. The front one is actually bigger than the rear. It can hold a Hydro Flask, which is nice. Nice soft touch materials for an armrest in addition to having some storage space. And if we take a look at the wheel in front of us, this is a little bit funky. These 4 dots here in front of the steering wheel are actually supposed to be an H in Morse code, but to me, it almost looks unfinished. I would have just liked to see the H badge like we have in the exterior, or even just Hyundai spelled out, Sonata even. Something like that I think would have been better than this. And then the steering wheel itself, while it is comfortable for the most part with the leather, it has this pseudo flat bottom but not flat bottom approach, and you have this lump right here in the wheel. It can be a little bit weird to hold as you're moving your hand around the wheel, but nonetheless, it's not that big of a deal. It's certainly not a deal breaker by any means. And then the shifter is over here. Now, this is almost similar to what you'd find on a Mercedes. The way it works is you kind of twist it forward to go in the drive, twist it back to put it in reverse, and on the outside we have this button here where you just click it and you can put the vehicle into park. So pretty straightforward, very nice interior. To me, it feels very, very modern. Some of the competition for this tends to feel a little bit outdated, but not here. I love everything that they've done, and it feels very, very high quality. Even the infotainment is just easy to use, both with the touchscreen and the buttons. I really, really like the value proposition here in the Sonata. So what's it like to drive the Hyundai Sonata? Well, it's a pretty good experience, and I know I say that a lot about modern cars, but the fact of the matter is we've gotten so good at building these modern cars that it is genuinely hard to find a bad car. Are there exceptions? Of course, but this is pretty good. I will say this, the ride can feel a little bit bouncy in sort of standard city driving, but on the freeway, it is very, very good. Not to mention incredibly quiet. You see, right now we can hear a little bit of road noise from these cracks in the road. If we lower down the window though, we can hear a lot more road noise, more wind, more sound, exterior sounds. But the minute that window goes up and seals, you can hear that solid seal, and it's so good. Even the build quality, there's no rattles, nothing is clattering or banging around in the car. It is a very, very solid constructed vehicle here, which is really, really impressive as far as the initial quality goes. Some things are a little bit funky from the driving perspective, like this steering wheel is like acting like it's flat bottom, so you have these weird notches, but it's not quite flat bottom. So sometimes when you grab that, that can be a little bit jarring, but I imagine you get used to that if you own this vehicle and drove it every day. As far as the actual driving sort of steering feel, I think it's pretty good. It's not over boosted, and the way it loads up is quite confidence instilling, where you can go into a turn confidently knowing the characteristics and handling capabilities of your Hyundai Sonata, which I personally really like. A lot of times in hybrids, the brakes are a bit too touchy. While they are a little touchy and kind of have that hybrid bite, I don't think it's as bad as some vehicles that I've driven. And you do get, when you accelerate, have a little bit of that hybrid whine to it, that sort of high-pitched revving that isn't a great sound. You get that here too. That's common with hybrids. But all in all, I'm quite impressed with this. The visibility is good. A-pillars are narrow and up front. If you put on the turn signals, the cameras come up on each side corresponding with wherever you're checking, which helps you to check your blind spots. So it's a big safety push. The mirrors themselves don't block visibility, but are easy to see out of, including the rear view mirror, and it just feels like a really, really well thought out vehicle. I'm quite impressed with everything that Hyundai put in here, and I think if you test drive one at a dealership, you would be impressed too. Things that might be a little bit quirky at first are things that you'll get used to by owning the vehicle, like the drivetrain select and some of the other things I mentioned, but all in all, it's quite good. You can see the nose bounce a little bit over these cracks. It's a little bit of that bounciness I was talking about, but all in all, it's not a bad car at all, and I don't think it would be a problem, and it's certainly not jarring enough where you'd be concerned about it, but it is very, very well built and fun to drive. So with that, that is a quick look at the 2024 Hyundai Sonata, which I think is an incredible value proposition. I think the biggest thing holding this car back from the get-go was the styling, which is the main update for 2024, not to mention the introduction of all-wheel drive for the gas models, which means if you live in an inhospitable area and you looked past this vehicle, even though front-wheel drive is still really, really good in the snow, now maybe you'll consider shopping the Hyundai Sonata. The other cool thing is I think this does a lot for the brand as a whole. This styling is quite sharp, better than most hybrids, which tend to be very, very reserved. This is very modern. Obviously, all LED lighting has a lot to offer with all of the fantastic features that you get that really makes a solid value proposition for the Hyundai. I mean, the build quality of this, quite solid, no rattles, very, very impressive here. Then you also get the benefits of the hybrid if you're checking out those models, which get over 600 miles of range if you drive it pretty easily, and they don't even cost that much to fill up. It's just a 13.2 gallon fuel tank, so you can save a lot of money by opting for the hybrid. The downside of that is the hybrids are front wheel drive only here. Now, front wheel drive, as I said earlier, is still very good in the snow, but if you really need all wheel drive, you'll have to look elsewhere. The key differentiator, I think, for the Sonata as the hybrid version is going to be that 6-speed automatic transmission. And the reason that's important is most other full hybrids, again, excluding those mild hybrids, still use CVTs or sometimes planetary gear sets, but that's not the case here with this vehicle, and I love that. You have a real torque converter transmission, and that might have deterred some people from buying hybrids in the past. Well, maybe you should check out the Sonata with a 6-speed automatic. But with that, that is the end of the video. If you could throw me a like, I'd really appreciate it. And feel free to throw down a comment below. Let me know what you think about the 2024 Sonata. And of course, make sure you get subscribed so you don't miss out on future content like this. With that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.